National Signing Day in the books for college football, and congratulations are in order to head coach Kirby Smart and the Georgia Bulldogs, pulling in the top-ranked signing class according to all major recruiting networks. The Crimson Tide of the University of Alabama finishing at number 6 nationally, and despite it not being a top 5 class, Alabama, Nick Saban hammering down needs on the defensive side of the football, in particular the secondary and along the defensive line. And with that being said, we have returned from the break on In My Own Words, the podcast, Touchdown Alabama magazine. Stephen M. Smith here. In the last segment, we were able to discuss players that have to step up, rise up, emerge in the absence of those in which the Tide losing to the National Football League. But moving from that to 5 recruits or 5 players from this year's signing class that I believe will make a significant impact going into next season. And to start this off at number 1, we'll look at cornerback Patrick Surtain Jr., 5-star out of American Heritage High School in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. First and foremost, Crimson Tide have done well in recruiting that Florida pipeline. At wide receiver, got Amari Cooper from Miami, got Chris Black from the Florida area, Calvin Ridley from Monarch High School, Coconut Creek, Florida, and also Jerry Judy, Deerfield Beach High School. From a defensive back standpoint, we look at Patrick Surtain Jr., of course, but then also Daniel Wright out of Boyd Anderson High School, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and also Eddie Jackson from the very self-same high school and the self-same place in Fort Lauderdale, Florida. Surtain at 6'1", 199 pounds, 6'1", 6'2", much more of that bigger, plays with more range at that corner position, tremendous ball skills, very physical. The number 5 target on the ESPN 300 recruiting network, was the top-rated corner in this class, comes from an NFL pedigree. Surtain's father, Patrick Surtain Sr., played 10 seasons in the National Football League, was the second-round pick of the Miami Dolphins in the 1998 NFL Draft, played with Miami from 1998 to 2004 before going to the Kansas City Chiefs from 2005 to 2008. A 3-time Pro Bowl selection, Surtain Sr. was 2002 to 2004, and in his NFL career, 415 tackles, 37 interceptions. The son, Surtain Jr., already drawing comparisons to now former Alabama safety Minkah Fitzpatrick. Now, with that being said, Fitzpatrick, when he came out of high school, that was St. Peter's Prep School in Old Bridge, New Jersey in 2015, Fitzpatrick came in pretty much already knowing how to run the Alabama secondary, because the same system he was under at New Jersey is quintessentially or essentially the same system being ran at Alabama. So when he came in the summer of 2015, Fitzpatrick, not an early enrollee, he was able to pick up things on the fly, quickly adjust to word jargon, different terminology, but also the play on the field, picking up the attention to detail, taking the angle away, tackling on time, breaking on the football, being physical. He picked up all of these traits and absorbing them quick on the fly. He came in challenging the likes of Tony Brown and Marlon Humphrey, 2 guys that came in the previous class, 2014, for a starting spot at corner. And though Minkah did not win the job as an outside island corner, his mental prowess, his ability to pick up things quickly, earned him the starting job in that nickel role, that star position in 2015. And we all know what happened that year. Fitzpatrick, 45 tackles, had about 2.5, 3 tackles for loss, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of sacks, 2 interceptions, both of those pick sixes against Texas A&M, and would end up being a freshman All-American that year. Am I saying that the comparisons to Fitzpatrick for Surtain are warranted? No, I'm not saying they are warranted, but when you look at Surtain, he does have the capabilities to kind of be a Minkah Fitzpatrick 2.0. Now, I'm not one to heap all of the expectations on a young high school kid, right? I'm one of those guys, and it's almost like if you are a parent of a child, you want that child to have the freedom to make their own mistakes. Now, granted, you want to discipline your child, raise your child in the right way, making sure they have that discipline, they have that respect, they have that nurturing. But at the same time, you don't want to be that parent that's way on top of the child and not giving that child room to breathe and make their own mistakes and learn from them. That's what I'm saying. So in terms of Patrick Surtain, yes, I see the comparisons to Minkah Fitzpatrick, and yes, he has that skill set to be that type of player, whether you have McCorner at nickel, at safety, what have you. But at the same time, giving Surtain that ability to learn and to grow will be key. But having his father, Surtain Sr., as his high school coach, the younger Surtain leading American Heritage High School to a 27-0 record in the last 2 seasons with 2 state titles. Surtain has the opportunity to come in and get early playing time and more than likely start, especially with 6 defensive backs going to the NFL draft: Minkah Fitzpatrick, Ronnie Harrison, Tony Brown, Hootie Jones, Levi Wallace, and Anthony Averett. So number 1 on this list that can make a huge impact, Patrick Surtain Jr., due to the need at that position, his size at 6'1", 199 pounds, his explosiveness, athleticism, ball skills, and it doesn't hurt that he comes from an NFL pedigree. His father, Patrick Surtain Sr., putting in 10 years in the National Football League. Moving on to number 2 on my list of players from this 2018 class that can make a solid impact next season, defensive lineman Stephon Wynn, who hails from Anderson, South Carolina, but played his high school ball, IMG Academy in Bradenton, Florida. Stephon Wynn, 6'4", 308 pounds. Once again, I bring this up. He was recruited as a defensive end, strong side defensive end, has explosion off the edge. But in that 300-pound weight class, I go back to, he could set up as a bit of a tweener, and especially with Daron Payne at 6'2", 308 pounds, leaving for the National Football League. Payne, exceptional hands, one of the better 2-gap defenders Alabama's had, exceptional against the run, also can create pressure to the quarterback. He caught a touchdown pass in the college football playoff, also had an interception to that same deal. So when I look at Stephon Wynn, he's got the very self-same capabilities. Now at Alabama, Nick Saban does want a type of guy of that same size to be able to pressure the quarterback, and Wynn does that, but also stop the run. I look at guys also like Jaron Reed and A'Shawn Robinson, who are 310, 313 pounds. A guy like a Dalvin Tomlinson, who's in that same weight class, but Stephon Wynn, way more, I guess I could say, athletic talent than those guys. Now, those guys were freaks of nature, don't get me wrong. I mean, this is the same A'Shawn Robinson in 2015 that jumped over an LSU offensive lineman and blocked a field goal. I mean, the guy is a freak of nature. But, however, I look at a guy like Stephon Wynn. If you put him at defensive tackle, he can create pressure to the quarterback and stop the run. If you put him at defensive end, he can explode off the edge. But with the guys that Alabama already has at defensive end, Isaiah Buggs, Raekwon Davis, Quinnen Williams, LeBron Ray, and then you sign Jerez Parks and Iyabi Anoma. There's just so much talent on the outside. Not saying Stephon Wynn can play outside, but just with that type of size and that skill set, I can see him making more of a bigger impact. And plus, he's already enrolled. He's enrolled at the university. He's already taking classes. He's already being immersed in the pageantry and submerged into doing things the Bama way. And according to a lot of players that I've talked to, Alabama in the coming weeks is about to start its fourth quarter conditioning program, so he will be exposed to that too. So with that being said, spring ball getting closer, the Alabama A-Day game inching its way in. Stephon Wynn at defensive tackle, very much so in the cards for me, but definitely a guy that can make an immediate impact coming into this 2018 class. Moving on to my number 3 guy, we flip this over to the offensive side of the ball, and therein lies Jalen Waddle at wide receiver, the pride of Bel Air, Texas, 4-star kid. He's 5'10", 175 pounds. Nick Saban spent a lot of time at the podium on Wednesday following the event talking about Jalen Waddle. Here's a young man that was clocked at 4.37 seconds in the 40-yard dash during the UA, or the Alabama-Houston camp. He can potentially be a dynamic slot receiver. I understand this 2017 class unarguably brought in the best talented wide receiver. In years past at the University of Alabama, under Nick Saban, you've always had that one marquee big-name receiver, whether it was Julio Jones, Amari Cooper, Calvin Ridley, and a bunch of, supporting cast guys. With this class, with that 2017 class, nobody was a supporting cast guy. Alabama landed a bunch of A-list actors. With this 2017 class, Jerry Jeudy takes a backseat to nobody. Devonta Smith takes a backseat to nobody. Henry Ruggs, Tyrell Shavers, who did not play a snap last year, takes a backseat to nobody. With the 2017 class, Alabama basically brought in a bunch of Denzel Washingtons, Matthew McConaughey's, Russell Crowe's, Scarlett Johansson's, Angelina Jolie's. They brought in a bunch of A-list actors and actresses. That's what Bama did with that 2017 wide receivers class. But seeing Jalen Waddle and the talent that he is, once again, 5'10", 175 pounds, Nick Saban talked about his character, his personality, his speed in space, his ability to accelerate and maneuver in small areas. Also, you bring in the special teams prowess. This is a guy that Jeff Banks wanted to get. And Jeff Banks, former special teams tight ends coach at Texas A&M, Alabama bringing him over from the Aggies regime, along with Austin Jones. Jalen Waddle was a big get. He was a primary guy that Jeff Banks went after. Keep in mind, Banks was one of the main reasons why Texas A&M landed Christian Kirk, and I'm hearing a lot of comparisons where special teams are concerned from Christian Kirk to Jalen Waddle. A lot of comparisons there. I've even gotten a chance to talk to a few Alabama media pundits, and there were two names, two former Alabama football players that they brought up to me. Media pundits brought up David the Deuce Palmer, former Alabama wide receiver that played from 1991 to, I believe, 1993-94. They brought up David the Deuce Palmer. And we all know how special that man was at wide receiver, whether he was in the slot, whether he was an outside vertical deep threat, and then also on special teams. Then also Amari Cooper. Now, I'm not saying Jalen Waddle is going to be David the Deuce Palmer or Amari Cooper. However, what I am saying is, from what people have told me, Waddle has those types of traits that a Palmer or an Amari Cooper has. Very explosive in small spaces, tremendous quickness. Nick Saban talked about how Alabama had been recruiting Waddle for a long time, somebody that jumps off the page, and a guy that I would be surprised if he doesn't start next year, or he doesn't have some role within this offense, because you get a Jerry Jeudy, a Devonta Smith, a Tyrell Shavers on the field, or you mix and match with the guys from the 2017 class on the field, and then you throw in a true slot and Jalen Waddle, who can take you off the route, who can take the inside angle, who can burn you on a wheel route or a slant and go take you deep, or make a catch, whether it's a 10-yard slant, a 6-yard in route, and make it go for a 52-yard touchdown. That's something special. Jalen Waddle, 4-star kid. I really like this guy. Once again, I'm not saying he's going to be an Amari Cooper or a David Palmer, but if you watch this man's tape and you look at some of the traits he exudes, the confidence he exudes, the speed, the hands, the acceleration in small spaces, there's a bit of an Amari Cooper there. There's a bit of a David Palmer there. So number 3, I've got Jalen Waddle. Moving on to number 4 here. Skylar DeLong at punter. 3-star kid from South Carolina, 6'4", 180 pounds. Guess who was also 6'4" when he came to Alabama? J.K. Scott, when he enrolled in that 2014 class out of Denver, Colorado, Mullen High School. And the interesting thing for DeLong is going to be, you are going to be the guy that follows behind, unarguably, the greatest punter of all time in Alabama history. I mean, Alabama had some good punters in the 2000s era. Lane Bearden was good. P.J. Fitzgerald was a part of that first national championship team under Nick Saban at Alabama. I mean, Cody Mandel was no slouch, but J.K. Scott is next level. He will punt in the National Football League for 10 to 15 years, depending on who picks him up. That is a next level talent. J.K. Scott, the first ever to get 10,000 yards. We're talking about a perennial all-conference, all-SEC, all-American type of player. A player that Alabama fans to this day believe that anything dealing with Ray Guy needs to be stripped of all credibility. I mean, you got Alabama fans to this day that believe the Ray Guy Foundation, the Ray Guy Committee, the Ray Guy organization staff, anything that is tied to Ray Guy needs to be stripped of all credibility, seeing how J.K. Scott was at Alabama for 4 seasons and no Ray Guy award at all. From this man's very first punt, 63 yards it traveled in 2014, the season opener between Alabama and West Virginia in Atlanta, to his very last game against Georgia, was nothing short of consistent. I mean, yeah, he may have had a game or two where he shanked a punt, but 9 times out of 10, J.K. would bounce back with an utterly virtuoso performance. And that's the guy that Skylar DeLong has to follow. I mean, it's not like from a coaching standpoint where you had Paul W. Bear Bryant, and then right after him you've got Walter Ray Perkins and Bill Curry, which were not bad coaches, but they had the unfortunate situation of you have to follow that guy. Nobody wants to follow that guy or have the pressure of having to follow that guy. No, you want to be the guy that comes behind the guy that failed trying to follow the legend. I mean, that's the position you want to see yourself in. Look at Gene Stallings. I mean, he has to follow Bill Curry and Ray Perkins that followed Paul Bear Bryant. So by the time Gene Stallings came in, I mean, yes, there were expectations, but the expectations were kind of low in a sense because you had to deal with Perkins and Curry. And by the time Stallings came in, fans were going, well, as long as he does better than Perkins and Curry, we're okay. That's not the same situation for Skylar DeLong. He, straight out the gate, has to follow J.K. Scott. Once again, 6'4", 180 pounds. Young man that Alabama had to flip from Tennessee. He's got a leg. He's got a leg. I go back to my point earlier. I don't like putting a whole lot of pressure on these guys because in recruiting, yes, you may be a 3, 4, or 5-star depending on the recruiting services that rank you, but it all depends on what you do when you come to Alabama. I mean, I've seen 5 stars tank, and I've seen 3 stars that have gone on to become legends. I've seen this happen. So, in the sense of Skylar DeLong, you have to give him kind of the liberty to see and gauge where he is, where his strong points are, where his success lies. One thing I got to give to him, he chose to come to Alabama. He chose to compete. He chose to want to be the best and allow the likes of Nick Saban and Jeff Banks to mold him. So it'll be interesting. But Skylar DeLong, number 4, guy that can make a very significant impact, seeing how he's got no choice coming behind J.K. Scott. And at number 5 for me, Austin Jones, the kicker, graduate transfer out of Temple. For the longest of time, under Nick Saban, the notion has been, look, we can have A-plus offenses, A-plus defenses, and we can squeak by with a C-minus, D-plus kicker and win championships. And though that's true, and though that's valid, when I look at a guy like Austin Jones, I feel like this guy takes a backseat to nobody. I feel like Jeff Banks, as a special teams guy, takes a backseat to nobody. And that's the reason why Nick Saban hired him, because he takes a backseat to nobody and because he really values special teams. You look back at Paul Bear Bryant for just a moment, special teams was a big deal to Coach Bryant. In fact, he cherished special teams. In fact, if you were not a headhunter, all-go, gung-ho guy on special teams, it was going to be hard for you to see this field under Coach Bryant. When you look at former Virginia Tech coach Frank Beamer, special teams was so important to him, they called it Beamer Ball. They named the special teams after Frank Beamer. Virginia Tech got its identity under the Beamer era solely off of special teams. So, when I look at Austin Jones, and he comes in to provide Joseph Bulovas with some competition, which Bulovas is not terrible, just slightly erratic. Has to get that consistency in place with his kicks, where the accuracy, trajectory, precision is concerned. Where leg strength goes, the kid from Mandeville, Louisiana, that came in this 2017 class, he's got the leg. Bulovas has got the leg. It's the accuracy. Can he fine-tune that? That's the biggest question. But Austin Jones, 50 of 67 in his career in kicks, field goals, 74.6%. And then in his last 3 seasons, sophomore through junior year, which is basically 2015 through 2017, Jones, 37 of 45 made field goals, 82.2%, very accurate from inside 40 yards, and can nail a couple of 50-yarders should you need him to do this. Once again, Alabama not requiring you to make 50-plus yarders, but if you can do it, that's gravy, that's icing on the cake, but you're expected, you're given that scholarship to drill those kicks inside 40 and 30 and 20 yards. But Austin Jones, I mean, Alabama, aside from Lee Tiffin and Jeremy Shinley, has not had the best success in that kicking department. And, I mean, yes, you can have C+, D- kickers and still have some success, but when you're Nick Saban, and you crave perfection, and you want your coaching staff to crave perfection, and you want your players to crave perfection, but in every inch of the game, even special teams, you want to see a whole lot of excellence. And I look at Austin Jones as somebody that can provide that. So, going back to this again, top 5 recruits, top 5 signees of his 2018 class that I see making a significant impact next season, next fall. Number 1, Patrick Surtain, junior cornerback. Number 2, Stephon Wynn, defensive lineman. Number 3, Jalen Waddle, wide receiver. Number 4, Skylar DeLong, punter. And rounding this out, number 5, Austin Jones, kicker. We take our final break here. In my own words, the podcast. Upon my return, or our return, we dive into the top 5 of the 5 most critical position coaches for Alabama next season. Crimson Tide, that coaching turnover still continuing on, but of the 5 coaches on this staff for next season, or of the coaches on this staff, we look at the 5 most critical. Don't go anywhere, folks. We're coming back. It's your boy, Stephen M. Smith, host of In My Own Words, the podcast. If you are a fan of this show, then I encourage you to subscribe to the Touchdown Alabama Magazine YouTube channel. Also follow the brand on Facebook, Twitter, and other forms of social media as we continue to bring you the best in Alabama football and Crimson Tide athletics.